just to intro this really quickly, what I find fascinating about this is in 2010, the head of RSA said, you will be breached. Now, I was a journalist. I was covering this stuff. No one had ever said that before. You know, everyone probably thought it, but certainly the head of a security firm, maybe they already knew they'd been hacked with APTs at that point, and they were just covering themselves. But certainly the head of a security firm had never said, you will be breached. We're selling you something, but guess what? I'm sorry, things are going to get bad. 2010. Advance things a little bit. What we're talking about now is assuming that you have been compromised. Just assume you've been compromised. What next? So, to help answer that difficult conceptual question, or maybe not so difficult, we'll find out, is Roy Catmore. He's the CEO of enSilo, and also Bob Vail with enSilo. And I'm just going to turn it over to these two.
So hi, everybody. Nice to meet you, that's first. I'm not sure I need to use a mic. I think my voice is good enough. But I'm the 30 minutes between you and lunch, so I'll try to make it fast. Feel free to stop me. So I do take questions in the middle. Feel free. It's going to be a very open session. We'll talk today about where's the market, where are the threats, and what can we do about that, or whether we already lost this battle. They told me that the forward works, so we're just going to move forward. But it's not. So we'll move forward. I guess that's me. So I'm working in security for 12 years. I came from Akamai security division. Basically, my role was future products, M&A and scouting for M&As. I ran product management for data security products before for Imperva, TrustWave. But before that, I ran engineering and government. So you can imagine that I'm kind of holding both sides. So technical and kind of market trends is something that I'm very, I can play with both ends. We can move forward. So it always starts with a man walking into a bar, and if you wonder, how does it look today and what are we talking about, what we're talking, I'll try to make it very simple. When you're talking about an attack, there is always a way in, right? If you want to steal something, you need to come in. And in order to take it out, you need to go out. Simple. So let's talk about these parts of what we like to call the cyber kill chain without drilling down into the actual technical pieces. So the first one, a man walks to a bar. Think there is a guard that you can move forward. There is a guy who works in a bar, right? And he makes sure that only the right people comes in. That's basically what we call today the endpoint solutions. Endpoint solution, or the EPPs, endpoint platform solutions, are trying to make sure that only the right things are coming in. But how do you know about what is right thing and what is wrong thing when you're just looking at people coming in? So what you basically see that there are a few guys that you're going to say they're definitely good, right? So let them go in. We know him. This guy sits here and drinks his beer every second day. That's good. So he's fine. Oh, that's a bad guy. He had a fight here over the bar. He can't go in. So that's the easy part. What about all the middle piece? We'll talk about the 44% in a second. And we'll talk basically what are the gray areas and why are they kind of the obstacle that we're running into today in the security world. We can move forward. 44% sounds like a huge number, right? So these are the numbers that we basically say, we don't know. We don't know if it's a good guy. We don't know if it's a bad guy. We'll see. When basically somebody tells you we'll see, it basically means that what the market likes to call today indication of attacks, indication of compromise, basically it's something. Might be different, might be an anomaly, might be a lot of other things, might be something there. We don't know. And it basically rolls the ball to you guys and say, you need to take a decision. You need to work on it. Some of you do that. Some of you can do that. But we'll talk about that more, why you can or cannot do that. Let's move forward. These are the numbers that were just released on Gartner. And the numbers are kind of 44. This is the numbers for 2015. EPP, endpoint protection. The guy who's waiting on the door and making the filters coming in. 44% of the references that participated said that they were breached with a new EPP in place, which means the 44% is a huge deal. So why do we fail to do that? We can move forward. Let's start with the ways that you can basically work through this infiltration. How can you go in? So we started with the point of, listen, there are 44% that you don't know. You just don't know. What do you do with don't know? Some of you have a big SOC teams, right? You want to make sure a forensics team. Can you do that on time? Can you scale to your alerts? We'll talk about that as well. will say you don't, but we'll keep that in mind. The other piece is how hard it is to basically go through and bypass anything that you got. So there are at least 4 ways to go in. The first way to do that is what we call the ODM, or the chain of computers. Think today, Superfish is a good thing, happened on Dell. Basically, Dell came in with a software. It's an advertising software. It's what is called the ODM. Somebody who is a partner of Dell. So when you're getting your new Dell computer, you basically got a software on it. You did not install it. You did not ask for it, but you got it. As a matter of fact, the problem was that it had vulnerability in it. A vulnerability that can actually allow somebody to take over your computer. But you didn't do anything about that, so basically means you don't need even an interaction or permission from the user. You just got a malware out of the box. Let's move on. Second is, a lot of people here think, well, we'll take this kind of responsibility out of our hands. Let's just move it, and we ask people, what do you do for storage? How do you protect your data? It's like, well, we work for, we got Microsoft 365. We got the Dropbox, right? We got the box. We got the Google Drives. You got yourself the biggest malware distributor in the world, but it's good for you. Think about that. What did you just do? You have a file. You want to tell to all of your workers, hey, this is the hourly report that you all need to fix now. I'm sharing it with all of you. Think that if you're a smart hacker and it happened before already, so there's nothing new that I'm telling here, basically what it needs to do to infect that single file. And all of you are going to get that. So you're going to distribute the malware to yourself. Who said something about lateral movement? You don't need a lateral movement today. You're using the cloud. The cloud will do the work for you. So, second way. Moving forward, what we like to call design vulnerabilities. Design vulnerabilities means that somebody is actually using the right flow to abuse your computer and take over your computer. How do you do that? I'll go through one of them, but there are at least a dozen a year. And they're very simple, and it's very hard to close these gaps because they are by design. The way to do it with PowerPoint, everybody are using PowerPoint. It existed forever. And what happened is that when you have a PowerPoint, basically PowerPoint have 2 files that it works with, INF and another file. And what happened there was that somebody actually sent everybody. It happened on the Ukraine-Russian kind of a little war there. And they started to send these PowerPoint files that basically came with those 2 files. Everything is okay. The thing was that basically one of them was not what you thought, and one of them was actually could have been changed to an executable, and you got yourself a malware. I'm talking about a very high level, but still, it's easy. It's the way the flow works. There's nothing unique here. So if you're using behavior anomalies, if you're using anything there, there's nothing wrong with it. Everything is okay. It will bypass everything, and it did. It bypassed anything that was out there when it was just released. Can move forward. The fourth is the most interesting piece because it's basically what we call it data only. Data only means that a lot of companies will say, we're looking at any payloads that comes in. What if there is no payload? Did anybody think about that? What if you're using the same stack of a valid application and you change something in it? As a matter of fact, you can change the application itself to make it in the same stack address, in the same places, to make it work against you. As simple as that. As a matter of fact, it was shown on Black Hat Europe in 2015. Not that hard to do. We see that all the time. If you're looking at vulnerabilities and exploitation of vulnerabilities, many of them will do that. So I was talking about 4 ways to do it out of the box. Nothing to do with the 44%, but it means that in the 44%, things that even might look legitimate, which was the left side, is not exactly what you thought it's going to be. So the good guy could become a bad guy if somebody actually triggers it in the right way. So this is basically the way it works. The other way to go of the 44% is, another one, is basically to say, what do we do with the number of alerts that we're getting? So why do we actually go with this? We got ourselves huge numbers. If you're looking at Ponymon, at the recent ones, you're going to figure out that we got huge numbers there. So let's talk about that for a second. And what do we do with all those insights that we're starting? Everybody wants to collect, and we buy more, and we buy more. And because everybody in security is the biggest joke that we keep buying more. We never take anything out. Because it sounds right? You say, hey, we're just making this wall higher. Who says higher is better? Think about that. Maybe when you're getting so many alerts, and eventually you're getting yourself to the target situation when, the guy did everything right. Basically, I heard a lot of companies coming in after the target saying, we took our policies and we just ripped them apart and threw them in the air because there was nothing to do with this thing. He did everything right. He bought. He tuned. He did. He also had 19,000 alerts a day. Yeah, somewhere out there were a few that said, hey, there's a problem there. But how can you scale into that when you have 19,000 of them? So do we actually scale to what we buy? Do we need help in this? And even if we do, is it our business to do that? Are we running a security business or are we running our own business? So let's talk about, we talked about the going in. Let's talk about what's going on in the detection itself. So let's assume, as everybody now, when we started enSilo in 2014 and we say compromise inevitable, infiltration has failed. People say, you're out of your mind. Now, nobody says that I'm out of, so, I'm becoming now the normal guy, which is pretty great for me. But let's talk about what happened the day after the attack had happened. So the day after, a lot of people are saying, you know what, yes, they can come in. We understand. 44%, got it. So they're in. What can we do about that? So that's a nice story about Google tool that happened. This is from 2008. They tried to predict flu around the world with using big data, because security loves big data. Big data is great. You're collecting a lot. You say, I bought so many tools. I don't know what to do with all the data. Let's push them into a big data, and then we'll be smarter. We'll do the correlation according to what? We'll talk about that. You don't know what you're correlating for. It's like going to Google and say, they got everything, but what are you looking for? Do you know what you're looking for? What is the first thing you're looking at when you just wake up and come to the office in the morning? You don't know, so you're not utilizing your tool. We'll talk about that. So they thought that they're going to, because everybody that has a flu is going to go to the internet and search around, and therefore they thought we will know where it's going to erupt next. Guess what? It failed. Because you don't know what you don't know. To make correlation, you need to know what to look for and how to correlate. And when you're looking at correlations are not as simple as people think. And if you got a great research team and you do know how to correlate, it means that I always compare that to, I don't know how many of you watched the series Dexter, but I used it yesterday and I found it very amusing. So as long as I'm amusing myself, I'll keep doing the thing. So Dexter was a serial killer that works as a forensics in the police and killed the serial killers. That's just the base story. I didn't see too many heads noting, so I just give you the highlights of the series. It's a good one. You should watch. But it's the same thing here. How do you know to make the correlation? You know it because somebody else was hacked. So for you to know, it means somebody else was hacked, which means what happens if you're the first? And we're talking targeted attacks. You are going to be the first. So that's not going to help you. So let's move on with that. Behavior analytics. So that's a lot of those. A lot of people, we all want to know what is, when we try to understand what is wrong, you try to understand, let's build a baseline, right? What is right? What is right is great when you understand what you're trying to do with it. If you're looking for a real-time prevention or something that will stop the next ransomware, don't go there. Because eventually what you're trying to do with behavior, and I'm not going to go into each and every one of them, but there's network and users and just name it, and there's something about that. Are you going to block somebody who woke up in the morning and used for the first time a new protocol? Ooh. No, right? You're not going to shut down business because of that. So I say, don't fool yourself. It's great if you know how to use it and how to utilize it. We can move forward. And that's the greatest deal that I was talking about before. This is the biggest, I always say there's big things in the industry, but we all like to collect. We're all big collectors, especially when it comes to security. No house cleaning in security. We keep collecting, so we're getting, these are the average. And the averages in enterprise, that was in the US, there are 17,000 malware alerts, just malware, in a typical week. If you're looking just on the numbers, I'll save you the effort to calculate. The 705 are 4%, which means target will happen again and again and again. And that's the deal. So I'll move that point to Bob, who has great stories on this, and then I'll come back and talk a bit about enSilo.
Good. Thank you, Roy. Roy raises a bunch of interesting points. I love analogies, so I'll give you one. The collection of the data that we're talking about here is very much like being in law enforcement. So if you ask any police officer what their job is, they're not going to answer, I'm going to prevent crime. I'm going to protect people from crime ever happening to them. Their job, like people who are reading through SIMS and the rest of these logs that we gather, is to find evidence of somebody who's already done something bad. Maybe figure out who that person is, maybe come up with a strategy from stopping that exact thing from happening again. Again, after the fact. If the idea here is that we are trying to prevent the loss of our data and to prevent the loss of our intellectual property, our money, whatever it is that we're trying to protect, that idea of gathering information is all fine and good for your post-mortem when you get asked, what can we do to keep this from happening again? Too late. Horse is out of the barn. Good luck. You can go chase him down the street if you like to, but your money, your IP, all of that stuff is already gone. What the enSilo proposition is, what Roy is going to get to here momentarily, is a completely different approach. Is the idea that you're going to accept that bad folks have gotten malware on your boxes, remote access Trojans, crypto lockers, whatever those things are, because if as security people, you've probably all heard this phrase, hackers only need to be right once. We have to be right every time. So are we right every time? If you ask my wife, I'm wrong every time. But it is the idea that we have to be right every time that's ridiculous. We're not, and we're not ever going to be. So if you accept the idea that you are breached, everybody loves these phrases. There's two types of systems, the ones that you know are breached and the ones that you don't know are breached. These are going to happen. So what do we do about this? Roy, give them the enSilo proposition of where we go next.
Sure. So what we're showing is that when you have more alerts, the downtime investigation basically goes down. And we're all playing that game. Basically what we're saying is, oh, we have too many alerts now. What are we going to do? Let's go to Dell SecureWorks and give them that thing, right? Because we like to outsource it. It's like, well, it's a big deal now. We're not a security company. We understand that now. Let's give it to somebody else who knows how to do it. We brought ransomwares. I'll tell you, as a security guy that plays in this territory for so many years, we brought ransomwares on ourselves. Because we basically said, hey, well, we're buying more. Yeah, we need more indications because we're not sure, right? The 44%, we're not sure. Give us more indications so we'll be sure. When are you going to be sure? And that is the question. And the question is that the downtime during investigation is growing. Are we shutting down computers because of investigation? When we're not sure, we're not. So ransomware works in 52 seconds, and they're locking your environment, enforcing you, making you to act fast. So we can move forward. And basically what we're saying is infiltration detection itself has failed. So what do we actually need to do now? It's like kind of, in a way that it seems like it's a lose-lose situation. Right? And like everything we'll do, if we'll try to stop them at the entry point, 44% will go in. Not good enough. If we'll try to buy a lot of solutions, well, we're going to basically kill ourselves to death. We're going to be buried with our own indicators. And worst of it, your boss is going to come to you and say, hey, I got this vendor. He said it was all the time. It was here. You missed it. Go figure it out. You tell him, hey, I got 90,000 alerts here. I got 4 people because you didn't give me another 14. And he says, well, we're not a security company. Why should I give you another 14? So everybody it all makes sense. So moving forward, when we started enSilo, basically the idea was, why don't we change the approach? Think about that. Is the intruder your goal? What enSilo will say, no, it's not. The intruder is not your goal. I like Bob Vales, he's always like, are you a policeman? No. Do you want to be one? No hard feelings? No. So why are you trying to be one when you're at work? It's like, why are you going, when somebody breaks to your house and you basically want to say, okay, you try to keep your stuff very, very safe, but somebody did that. You're not starting to go and put like all kind of things and look for fingerprints in your house. You're going to call the cops, right? Why don't you do that when you come to work? Why don't you try now to become the security officers that is doing the forensics? It's not your business, and it makes a lot of sense that most of us will fail. So moving forward, if I won't drill into cyber kill chain, but what I'll tell you is that the market is very, very focused on infiltration, the intruder, right? Let's make him stay outside. Let's make sure we'll take him out. Let's block him. Let's look for him. Why is he a goal? You need to understand that's a guy who's putting all of his effort to go in, and you start, and you have your own business, you have some extra time with a small team, you try to prevent him from coming in. He has all of the efforts to come in. So kind of, I would say it's a David and Goliath. You're not going to win that fight, but why won't we think about that differently? Why won't we think, let's start at the end of it? And when we start at the end of it, if you will be able to stop the exfiltration, stop the data, because the data is the goal. If you prevent the data tampering or data exfiltration, and you prevent that piece basically, what you're trying to say is, if I'll stop this, and I'm still going to enable my system to work, I'll be able, and I have now time, because nothing is going on, no consequences, I'll be able to see what they were looking for. I'll see how they basically spread around, and how did they got in. You can click. We didn't think about that first. Sons actually talked about that in 2013. I guess we were just lucky enough to do it first. But I'm sure that's not going to happen for too long anyway. So let's move with that. Understanding this, why is starting at the end such a good thing? So 3 value proposition, and it's all going to be about OpEx because it's your business. And business is OpEx and nothing else. Don't run after the intruder. First OpEx is, when you start at the end, you're spoiling the movie, right? You know how it's going to end. You're getting the attacker red-handed. And that's the thing. Red-handed means you know. He's got something, that's it. So you know the end of the movie. The second one is going to be, it's not just that we know the end of the movie. Let's prevent the consequences, right? We stop it at the end. Don't take my data. Don't tamper my data. Don't ransoming, no nothing. So let's make it a good ending. And last but definitely not least, allow you to keep working. Because if you think about that, what an attacker can do to you today is basically to say, well, you have a best practice to shut down and isolate devices? That's great. Let's do that. So now he's getting one of your distribution lists of your, who knows, your financial, your analysts. And he's blocking, he's sending something very obvious to everybody, but you have your best practice. So you blocked all of them. So now the entire division of analysts are not going to work for a week, because how long is it going to take you to recover from blocking and isolating 70, 100, 200 computers? Long time, right? So keeping the ongoing uptime, don't DDoS yourself to death. You need to assume compromise. And when you assume compromise and you see it as a chronic disease, you treat it as a way to control it. Don't try to cure it. And that's the difference of the concept here. When you're looking at our customers, basically our customers comes exactly with this approach. If we're talking about chip companies, it's the OpEx. They say, we are not going to have the 15, 20, 100 people. We're not the JP Morgan. We don't have our army of people that can investigate and do that in a timely manner. We don't have that. We need it and accurate. When it happens, I need to know. And make it a good ending, because I'm not going to jump with my pajamas to do something about it. So make sure that you're doing it. So this is the other piece. Do it all the way. Do it in real time and autonomously. The way of enSilo thinking is basically we are a real-time data protection platform against targeted attacks, which means we're not looking at the internal threat, we're looking at the external user who is not part of your corporation and trying to take the data or trying to tamper the data. No disruption to business. This is where we are. The way it works, in a very high level, basically everybody are on the internet. We'll talk where you are, but you can be anywhere with your corporate device. And what we're saying is, sometimes when you go to the internet, as you see, everything within enSilo can come in. We invite everybody to come in. What we're trying to say is, sometimes when you're going to the internet, bad things happen. Whether you know, whether you interacted or whether you didn't, something happened. And so what? What we're saying is, when the bad things trying to communicate, try to do something, this is where we block it in real time. Why is that working? Because we're not trying to prevent them from coming in. We're trying to do containment. And that's the best you can do today, and you need to understand that, because all the ones that bought these great tools are still having 44% breach. And that's what it is. The way it works, we're going to run fast through that. We like to divide it into 4 phases. We have phase 1, we install a one-time collector. One-time means not the old school antiviruses or the endpoint solutions that no updates, no upgrades, no minimum criteria. So it's not that you have to have a server from 2012. We don't care. Whatever you got for any operating system that you've got, we'll put a one-time collector on it. What does it do? It collects. It's a little camera that sits inside the operating system. The common denominator for us, we don't need to learn, is the operating system. And so when the operating system, we work with all of the vendors of the operating system, so you can imagine that. And basically what we're trying to say, if there's a new process, there's a little camera there. It takes a snapshot. We'll take a snapshot. There's a new, this process talks to another process, initiates another thread, another module, another something. We'll make a family album of that process. So we know everything. We have a graph of that process from the time it was born to the time that, number 2, connection establishment. So we are the network. When there is a connection establishment request, somebody says, I want to talk. I said, who are you? He says, I'm process A. What do we know? Give me the graph. Give me the family album of process A. And we'll put it one next to the other. There's a guy here claims to be process A. He wants to talk. This is the graph. This is what we know about him. We'll send it to number 3. Don't worry. We're going to eat in a second. Number 3. Number 3 is the core. The core is the brain of the system. No learning, no big data, no buzzwords there. Out-of-the-box policies that can say whether the metadata that was sent is valid. And valid is a whitelist. Whitelist according to what? Whitelist according to the operating system. The operating system was designed in a way. It's lower than applications, or we don't care what you got there. Lower than protocols. We don't care how you communicate, which language you're talking. And out of the box, and we don't care where you are. This core can sit on-premise, can sit on cloud. And as a matter of fact, all our customers are using both. Why both? Because you can go and work on your corporate, but you can have a meeting in Starbucks, and you still want the same protection, seamless. So we can block that out of the box. What do we block? The connection establishment. Why? Because we want the ongoing uptime. So we want it to work even on a compromised environment. So I think the value proposition was very clear on this. And I think we're getting to the conclusion. The conclusion is very simple. Compromise is inevitable, and infiltration detection is failing and will continue failing. Keep on the goals. The goals is the data. Level with the attacker. That's the best we can do before we're going to dig some holes in the walls and put our biggest secrets in a safe. Protect what is really matters and know what you can and cannot do. Prevent the consequences. Thank you.
Good.